Hi, I'm Ramprasaath, and this work is squinting at VQA models, introspecting VQA models with sub-questions. Current visual question answering models often are not consistent. For instance, they might think that these giraffes are not in captivity, but also think that there exists a fence around them, which is confusing because one would think that it might rely on the fence to decide if the giraffe is in captivity. This makes it hard to trust these systems. To study this problem, we start by distinguishing between perception and reasoning questions. Reasoning questions are more complex. Answering them requires aggregating perception with common sense understanding about the world. Perception questions, however, are simple of the form what color is the man shirt. We start by identifying perception questions in the VQA dataset. Majority of the questions in the VQA dataset fall in the category of perception questions. In this work, we define and categorize perception questions into 5 categories stated below. These questions form about 82% of the VQA dataset, and we identify them through simple regex rules. This leaves us with questions requiring reasoning or use of common sense knowledge over perceptual concepts present in them, such as how's the train powered, or is this a good idea for the rainy day? This categorization of questions into perception and reasoning promotes a better assessment of visual perception and higher level reasoning capabilities of models rather than conflating these capabilities. Now that we have a list of questions requiring reasoning, we turn to obtain related perceptual sub-questions needed for answering these reasoning questions. We collected a data set on Amazon Mechanical Turk where people were asked to provide perception sub-questions that serve as subtasks in the compositional process required to answer the reasoning questions in the original VQA dataset. For this image and the reasoning question, is this a keepsake photo? People ask about the black and white nature of the picture and the veil the woman is wearing. Similarly, for this image and the question, are these giraffes in captivity? People ask about the existence of the fence. VQAintrospect has about 200K sub-questions for 86K reasoning questions. We evaluate the quality of the dataset along two axes, sufficiency and perception, and show that our dataset is of high quality. The fact that these sub-questions are in the same modality, that is, questions with associated answers, allows evaluation of any VQA model rather than only models that are trained to provide justifications. And this is a key observation that we use to develop an evaluation methodology for reasoning questions. After identifying the perceptual concepts humans use for answering the reasoning questions, a natural next step is to see if VQA models are consistent. There are 4 possible outcomes when evaluating the reasoning questions with associated perception sub-questions. For instance, we find that models answer the main and the associated sub-question right 47.7% of the times. The model gets the main question right but gets the associated sub-question incorrect 18.5% of the times, and so on. We define consistency as the percentage of the times the model gets the sub-question right given that it gets the main question right. We find that models are consistent only 72% of the times. This inconsistency between higher level reasoning tasks and the lower level perception subtasks that it builds on suggests that the VQA model has not effectively learned how to answer the reasoning question and that it might not be able to generalize to same or closely related reasoning question with another image. In order to improve the consistency and the reasoning ability of models, we introduce an approach called SQuINT. We add a term to the loss function to encourage the models to look at the same regions when answering the main question and the sub-question. We find that SQuINT improves consistency by 6.8% while marginally improving the reasoning performance defined as the accuracy on the reasoning questions. For this image and the main question, is the clock in America? The baseline Pythia model not only answers the question incorrectly, but it seems to look at the building, which does not provide the necessary information. However, for the sub-question, is there an American flag? The model looks at appropriate regions containing the US flag. This is a case of a reasoning failure since the model perceived correctly but wasn't able to use that for the higher level reasoning question. On applying SQuINT, the model looks at the appropriate regions and answers correctly. In this work, we introduce a new split of the VQA dataset, perception versus reasoning. We release a new dataset called VQAintrospect containing 200K sub-questions. We find that even top-performing models are not always consistent. We introduce SQuINT to improve the consistency and reasoning capability of models. Our dataset can be found in this link. We believe that our dataset has a lot of potential and look forward to the community using it in creative ways. Thank you.